The rain had a particular way of falling on Friday evenings. It wasn't a storm, just a persistent silver drizzle that turned the city's neon into shimmering watercolors and made the world feel smaller, closer. Inside Molly's diner, the world was a capsule of golden light and the steady, rhythmic percussion of water on the awning. At a corner booth, Leo sat with his hands wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee, watching. He wore a faded army jacket, its patches fraying, and a week's worth of gray stubble dusted his jaw. He looked, for all the world, like a man who had nowhere to be. This was his 6th visit, and each time he ordered only the coffee, nursing it for hours. His eyes, sharp, intelligent eyes that betrayed his disguise, following a single waitress. Her name was Chloe. She was 24, with the kind of tired warmth that comes from working double shifts to pay for a nursing degree. She moved with an efficient grace, balancing 3 plates up her arm, remembering that Table 4's son had just made the baseball team, that the elderly couple by the window shared a tuna melt with extra pickles. Her kindness wasn't performative, it was woven into the fabric of her being, a thread passed down. "More hot water, hun?" she asked Leo now, pausing by his table. She didn't see a beggar, she saw a man who looked cold, his clothes damp at the shoulders. "I'm fine, thank you," Leo said, his voice a gentle rasp he'd practiced. "You sure? On the house. This rain's got a chill to it." Before he could answer, she was gone, returning with a small metal pitcher. "Here, warm you up from the inside." It was a small thing. A millionaire like Leo Chen, whose tech empire was built on cold logic and disruptive algorithms, could buy entire chains of diners, but he couldn't buy that small metal pitcher of hot water, offered without expectation. He was here, disguised, because he'd seen Chloe once from his limousine, helping a stumbling elderly man up the diner steps. He'd been captivated by a single, unobserved act of grace. He'd concocted this test, a cynical fairy tale, to see if the grace was real. But the story he'd walked into was larger than his own. Chloe lived in a small 3rd-floor walk-up with her mother, Anya, and her 7-year-old son, Sam. Their home smelled perpetually of garlic, thyme, and the crisp pages of library books. Anya, who had come from Poland as a young bride, was a seamstress. Her hands, always slightly traced with chalk lines and tiny pinpricks, were instruments of quiet magic. She could turn a faded curtain into a princess cape for Sam, reinforce the worn knee of Chloe's uniform pants with a stitch so fine it was invisible. That night, Chloe came home smelling of grease and coffee. Sam, a whirlwind in dinosaur pajamas, launched himself at her legs. "Mama, Babkia made pierogi!" Anya emerged from the tiny kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face, a map of laugh lines and quiet resilience, softened. "Sit, your bones." This was their ritual, the shared meal, the day's debris shaken off at the door. They ate at the small table under a lamp with a tasseled shade, Sam chattering about a fort he'd built, Anya quietly pressing more food onto Chloe's plate. It was a scene of profound, unspoken solidarity. Anya's husband, Chloe's father, had passed years ago, a gentle mechanic with oil under his nails. They had built a life on the foundation of his memory and their mutual, ferocious love. Their wealth was not in banks, but in the stocked freezer of homemade soup, the secure button on Sam's coat, Anya sewn twice, the way Chloe would massage her mother's shoulders after a long day at the machine. Chloe didn't know the man in the corner booth was a millionaire. She knew he looked lonely, and loneliness in her world was a tangible ache to be soothed. The following Friday, Leo was there again. The test was supposed to be simple: reveal his true self, reward her kindness, and what? Sweep her off her feet? The arrogance of it now felt hollow, chipped away by the reality of her. Tonight, the diner was frenetic. A high school football game had let out, and teenagers flooded in, a tidal wave of laughter and hunger. Chloe was a maestro, managing the chaos with a calm smile. But Leo saw the flicker of strain around her eyes, the slight tremble in her hand as she refilled a syrup dispenser. He also saw something new, an older woman with Anya's wise eyes and a neat home-mended coat sat at the counter with a small boy. The boy, Sam, had a coloring book and a box of crayons. The older woman, Anya, sipped tea, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm. They were there, Leo realized, so Sam could see his mother at work, so Chloe could have a moment to see their faces in the midst of her shift. During a momentary lull, Chloe brought Sam a small glass of milk. As she turned, a rowdy teen backing up from a joke bumped hard into Chloe. The tray she held aloft, laden with dirty dishes, wobbled dangerously. With a swift, instinctive movement, Leo was out of his booth. He didn't think. His hand shot out, steadying the tray, his other arm a barrier between Chloe and the teen. The clatter subsided. The teen apologized, red-faced. Chloe, breathless, looked at Leo, not at his ragged jacket, but into his eyes. "Thank you," she said, the words warm and full. "It's a busy night," he said, his cultured accent almost slipping through. "You're a lifesaver. Please, let me get you a proper meal, on me. You must be starving." It wasn't pity, it was solidarity, a fellow soldier in the trenches of a Friday night rush, offering a share of her rations. Before he could refuse, she'd guided him back to his booth and disappeared into the kitchen. She returned not with the standard meatloaf special, but with a plate that held clear evidence of personal care. The portion was generous, the mashed potatoes were a smooth, buttery mountain, the green beans were fresh, not canned, and there was a small, perfect gravy bottle on the side. It was a plate assembled by someone who understood the soul-feeding value of a hot meal. "Eat," she said, and it was a gentle command. As Leo ate the best meal he'd had in years, he watched the family at the counter. Anya leaned over, pointing something out in Sam's drawing. Sam laughed, a sound that cut through the diner's noise like a clear bell. Chloe would glance at them between orders, her shoulders softening each time. This was their ecosystem of care, a resilient, three-generation engine of mutual support. He was an outsider, a satellite observing a planet of profound, ordinary beauty. His test felt like a violation. The rain had stopped when Leo finally stood to leave. He approached the register where Chloe was tallying a bill. He reached into the deep pocket of his army jacket, his fingers brushing past the roll of $100 bills he'd brought as part of his reveal, and found instead a single, crumpled $5 bill, his intended payment for all those coffees. He placed it on the counter. For the coffee, and the meal. It was important. Chloe smiled, pushing the bill gently back toward him. The meal was for steadying the ship. This one's on Molly's. You have a good night, okay? Stay dry. He was about to insist, to finally break his character, when Sam appeared at his mother's side, holding his drawing. It was a chaotic, wonderful scene of the diner, with stick-figure customers and a giant sun smiling in the corner. "I drew you," Sam said to Leo, pointing to a figure in the corner booth, colored entirely in green. "You're the quiet man. Mama says quiet people hear the best stories." Leo felt a lump rise in his throat, so fierce and unexpected it threatened to shatter his disguise. He crouched down, bringing himself to Sam's eye level. "It's a magnificent drawing. Thank you for including me." Anya had walked over, her observant eyes taking in Leo's clean, well-kept nails, the quality of his boots beneath the dirt. She saw not a beggar, but a man hiding. She placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Come, Kochani, let the man go. It's late." But her eyes met Leo's, and in them was no judgment, only a quiet, knowing kindness that seemed to say, "We all have our reasons." Leo left the diner, the bell jingling behind him. He walked 2 blocks in the cool, washed clean air to where his luxury car was discreetly parked. He sat in the driver's seat, not starting the engine, watching the condensation fog the windshield. The diner's glow was a distant beacon. He thought of Chloe's unpurchasable kindness, of Anya's silent understanding, of Sam's green stick figure inclusion. He thought of his own empty penthouse, a masterpiece of minimalist design that echoed with silence. His test was over. He had failed, or perhaps he had finally passed. She was everything he'd suspected and more. But the story wasn't about a wealthy man testing a waitress for worthiness. It was about a lonely man being offered a place, however temporary, at a family's table. It was about the millionaire discovering he was the one who was poor. A week later, on a bright, ordinary Tuesday, Chloe arrived at work to find a formal letter addressed to her. It was from the Chen Family Foundation. With trembling fingers, she opened it. It stated that due to a new community outreach initiative, the foundation was awarding a full scholarship to her nursing school, covering not only tuition, but also a living stipend. Additionally, they were funding a grant for a local seamstress cooperative to purchase industrial-grade equipment, with a Mrs. Anya Kowalski listed as the proposed lead instructor. There was no fanfare, no dramatic reveal, just a typed letter and a business card for a foundation liaison. The cover story was flawless. But that evening, when Chloe and Anya pored over the letter in disbelief and joy, Sam tugged on Chloe's sleeve. He was holding his drawing from the diner. "Mama, look!" There, in the bottom corner, almost hidden, next to the green stick figure, Sam had earlier scribbled a small yellow shape. "I drew a treasure chest for him, because quiet people have secrets." Chloe and Anya looked at each other, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. They didn't know the whole story. They didn't need to. They understood the language of kindness, and they knew, in their bones, that their small, consistent offerings into the universe, the hot water, the steadying hand, the shared pierogi, had somehow, mysteriously, echoed back to them in a wave of grace. Months later, on Chloe's first day of nursing school, she walked into a new cafe near the campus for a coffee. It was warm, inviting, and oddly familiar. The menu boasted affordable, hearty food and had a policy of never turning anyone away. The owner, a quiet man who was often seen reading in a corner booth, had insisted on it. He looked up as she came in. He was clean-shaven now, wearing a simple sweater. Their eyes met. No disguise, no test, just a recognition. "The usual?" he asked, a small, hopeful smile on his face. Chloe smiled back. The warmth of a shared, unspoken understanding filled the space between them. "Yes," she said, "that would be perfect." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a beginning, a joining of two stories, where the real treasure wasn't the money, but the discovery that the greatest wealth is a seat at a table where you are seen, not for what you have, but for the kindness you offer. And that sometimes the best way to find your family is to first lose yourself and be found by them.